Hey everyone, it's Gabrielle Flores from Soul Excelsior. I am here with the amazing star of the Netflix show Extreme Engagement, PJ Madam. Wow! Yes, we are so
Thank you. Beautiful welcome there.
Oh, I am so happy for you to be here because I know what an honor it is. PJ is actually, you're recording season 2, is that right?
Yes, well, we have been, but also we've had a few little hurdles and had to take a few little pivots, as Tim and I always do. So the good news, or rather, I guess the spoiler alert, is that yes, we're still together. So many people were like, "Are you guys still together?" And we thought, can't go through that extreme engagement and not be together. It's kind of
exactly true. For those who haven't watched the show, let's just do like a little background. So first off, what intrigued me first about the show was how you guys started off, right? This whirlwind romance. So tell me, did Tim, did he propose to you immediately, like from the jump? Was it like love at first sight? Was it an extreme love at first sight? What was it?
I think for Tim it was. He will openly say that for him it was love at first sight. For me, I was coming out of a marriage, so I'd actually been through something huge in my life and thought the only guys I'm going to look at the moment are rebounds. So for a relationship, I wasn't looking for deep, I wasn't looking for a soulmate, I wasn't looking for anyone other than something to, I was still kind of recovering from something as big as a breakup of a marriage. And if anyone's been through that, you know what it's like. It's a roller coaster of emotions, and in a way you forget that it's just like a relationship, but the label of marriage in your mind gives you a perception that it's so much bigger, and suddenly you're dealing with the ultimate breakups of breakups kind of thing. And so when I met Tim, I knew him as a friend, but I obviously knew he was keen and it was gorgeous, but I thought I've got to take it slow and I've got to be cautious. And I probably had a few shields up, as most people do, men and women, when they've been hurt before, you go in quite cautiously. But he wore his heart on his sleeve, and that's Tim through and through, 100%. And that's something so endearing about him, which I think melted and thawed any of my scars. So he did. It would have been, oh gosh, God, it feels so long ago now. I feel like an old couple. It would have been at least, it feels like about a good 10 months to a year later in New York, actually.
Oh, yay. Where in New York?
It was at a jazz bar actually called something about a bird. Can't remember it. Isn't that terrible? I can't remember. But it was,
because you guys have listen, you guys are always everywhere. So how could you,
I know. I can't even remember where we've been to at the moment. But yeah, so long story short, he proposed. I said yes. And then he got an opportunity of a lifetime to create his first show called Boy to Man. And that was really looking at rites of passage for men around the world. I mean, I think this would have been maybe 5 years ago, where he kind of saw a bit of a gap where, in the West, where boys become men maybe when they get keys to a car, or maybe they graduate from university, or maybe they leave home. But out in the tribal world, there's still something that really marks what it means to be a man. And there's quite a lot of topical discussion around manhood and masculinity and toxic masculinity here in the Western world. Yeah. And so Tim kind of went back to have a look at that and some of the changes there. I mean, it was a very lovely and entertaining and fun show, but the essence of that was there. And so I was kind of like, aren't we engaged, by the way? Like, and then it was gone. And then when he came home, he had actually suggested, and I was always knowing that this was going to be hinted along the way. But he said, well, they do a lot of different things to see if you're suited for marriage out in the wild. So, we could always go back out there. And something in me snapped and went, sure.
Okay. Yeah. I've got so many questions. Okay. So first off, you mentioned about your divorce. So you mentioned that. I just want to touch on that because I do have some viewers that are currently divorced, and they actually are, like you said, those walls are up. They don't even want to be around anyone because they're like, well, I already did that. So I think what I found you to be so intriguing to me, like your soul is so intriguing to me, but you're just like, yeah, no, let's do this. So was it like, so tell me, because what I understand about your essence, and in the show it captures it, is that your spirit is like, it's like the inner child, she is out, is what I'm saying. She is like, yes, let's go for it, let's be brave, and let's let's go on this biggest adventure. So tell me, like, is that true? Is that true about your spirit and your soul? Do you find that you've always been that way, just someone who's always just risk taking and goes for what they want?
That's a great question, and I actually have an answer for you.
Yay!
No, for better or worse, yes, I am wearing my heart on my sleeve a lot more, and trying to take more risks and everything. Like, be the open book is the only way that I think you can be authentic and honest. As much as it may hurt yourself and other people around you, I think it's always important to be true to yourself, and that journey in itself is quite difficult. Recovering from the divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me, but I didn't see it at the time. A lot of your viewers might, relate to this, where when you have had a setback emotionally, you download perceptions that you think you're damaged goods, you've got baggage, no one will ever love you again, you won't love yourself again, I'm ruined, I failed. All of these things that you may have seen in the show, I think it was in episode 6, and I was carrying that. But there was something also in Tim that made me realize life is short, and you only have one life, and you never know when it's going to end. And also, I'm a true believer in, we're here to discover ourselves and to build on ourselves and to grow. And if I never felt my pulse in my life, then I'd be missing out. And that's kind of, for me, it's there for everyone. It's not just for Tim and I who did an extreme engagement. It can be the smallest examples in life, like getting over a divorce, or getting over a job lost, or getting an awful diagnosis, or learning some tragic news. I mean, we were all given these challenges to kind of not just test us, but overcome them. And they're hard. They're damn hard. They've got to be hard. They have to be awful. You have to have your back against the wall. And I feel like that almost propelled me to make a really clear choice in my life. And the divorce had a lot to do with it, but I did think to myself, am I going to be scared and let these perceptions and thoughts run the rest of my life? Or am I going to throw caution to the wind and see what happens? And trust me, the latter was way more risky. It was not comfortable. I didn't have any control. I hated the feeling. And now that I've taken, one leap of probably many, I feel a lot more true to myself. I feel better. I feel happier. I feel more freedom. I feel more of a release. My ex and I have a wonderful relationship. He supported not just myself, but Tim as well, through the backgrounds of the show, and even when the show was released. So I've turned a massive corner in realizing, wow, there's happiness on the other side, and not just that, but healing. So, like a little message. I mean, it may resonate to some of your audience or not, but I think when you put it out there to the universe that you want to have some healing, and you do have to kind of walk on the bit of a cliff, like you do have to risk a little bit, you do have to put yourself out there, you do have to work hard, but I think there's definitely happiness at the other end. It pays off. Yeah.
Amazing.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. No, to me, it makes complete sense, because I live my life that way. But I love what you said, because that's just so beautiful. And just to see how much you have, like, it's so interesting, like the rebirth and the reborn. Even now, speaking to you, well, if you guys watch the show, you will see it's like so many, like, it's just layers, right? It's layers and layers and layers of uncovering.
I think the one funny thing the audience doesn't realize is that the PJ that they meet in episode 1, because also it's shot chronologically, right? That was 2 years ago. So the PJ and Tim that you see at the end are two totally different people. So they've watched us grow. And, I've even got my parents going, we really didn't like you in some points of the show. And then my dad going, poor Tim. And then another point going, oh, Tim, we thought that you're a bit harsh there. And so we've taken people on an actual roller coaster of our growth. So we documented that. And while we wanted it to be entertaining and also digestible and easy to watch and have those touch points, which were, I guess, accessible for everyone. I'm so sorry. I don't know why that came up.
That's real. That's what we like. We like realness. She probably heard you talking about that.
No. She's interstate, but she's texting me about Christmas. I'm like, that's too far away from me. I don't know where she's better. Yeah, no, we wanted people to come on that journey with us because we felt like it's such a myth to believe that you find the one perfect person for you and you stay the same. Like, you should be open to growth, and it's not a bad thing. Change can be quite wonderful if you know that there's good and bad in everything. And sometimes, we need to take the perceptions away that negative is just always negative. There are some wonderful things that happen out of tragedy, and not always at the time, but maybe perhaps in hindsight, or maybe as the lessons keep growing and you keep going on. So we wanted everyone to experience that part of our relationship where we were really looking at it under the heat of a microscope, going, are we really suited for life together? Yeah. So that's what we... Yeah.
No, I absolutely love that, because especially with the modern day where we live in social media, right? And we know that in social media, it's so easy to put up amazing pictures of us and we're so happy and we're so this, and no one ever puts like what actually goes on with like the ups and the downs of the relationship, because it's just, sometimes it's like, you just don't know if you want to be vulnerable enough to talk about it. And I just love that you and Tim were like, we're going to go and travel the world. And not only are we going to travel the world, but we're going to put ourselves out there, like our love, our bond. So first of all,
can I just add something there, Gabrielle? Yeah. One of the things that we get, like, we get both people who love the show and don't like the show. But I mean, it's not everyone's cup of tea, right? Some people want to switch on to something else, and that's totally fine. In fact, I respect that, being a former journalist. Yeah. One of the funny things that we get is some people go, oh, those producers made you look like such a bad person sometimes. And I keep thinking, there were no like, we were. So what you say is allowed to put on air for the world to see. So we know, like, I know I don't cover myself in glory. Tim knows that he had bad times in certain parts, and we totally let that. We were absolutely all approving of that, and testament to Netflix as well. They were loving that vulnerability, but because we're also in the zone, we weren't thinking of social media or how we may look. We were just like, look, I had a really bugbear. I had a massive issue with Tim at that moment. I thought he was being this, and whatever, or him vice versa. And yeah, so we allowed all of that to happen. There were no...
That's what I love. That's what I mean, I'm a New Yorker, so I love real stuff. That's how I am. I'm like the realer, because you actually grow, and then you see, like, you said it before, relationships are about the ups and the downs, and it shows like the waves. It kind of looked like you both were, oh my goodness. So, okay. So there's so many, because I like have so many episodes stuck in my head.
Go for it.
Yeah. So so first off, let me ask you, if you and Tim traveled the world for a year, and you guys had this opportunity, how did you guys, like, let's say there's a couple that's like, let's be like PJ and Tim, let's go travel the world. How does one do that? Like, first of all, let's talk about financially, like, how is that even possible? Did you guys prepare for this? Like, or were you guys just like, let's just make this happen? Like, tell me.
No. So what happened was, so how we made the show, and different to, what actually happened in the show, is a totally different conversation, but I'll condense it as quickly as possible. I left my job. I was a newsreader and also a current affairs reporter here in Australia. Yeah. And I left my job to set up a production company, basically become, I'll say self-employed, which is code for unemployed, for about 2 months. We had a little bit of money saved, and then he also left his job. Like, he just finished that series, and because he does everything himself, and because he's like, he fulfills the role of about 10 people, which is great. But if he gets run over a bus, everyone's in trouble, basically. So what happened was, we were like, right, we will move out of our home in Sydney. We moved to a tiny little island off Australia. It's part of Australia, called Tasmania. Not many people know where that is. And that's where Tim's mum is from, actually. And we moved back in at the ages of like our mid-30s, moved back in with her, and researched. So because we have media backgrounds, we wanted to find tribal areas. And Tim knew a lot of these anyway from previous adventures, but he knew of these, and then we just researched calling fixes, which are basically like media guides, like specific for media crews, looking at government agencies, looking at different documentaries, anything that anthropologists have written before, and just went to town on researching these tribes. And we actually had more tribes than what you see in the show, but a lot of them, for whatever reason, didn't make it or didn't end up being on the show. And so that alone was unpaid work. We were basically, living out of cans of, baked beans towards the end.
Yeah.
And then we thought to be able to fund this was going to be all of our travel expenses. I mean, we could crew it ourselves, but we thought if we really want to make it the way we want to make it, we probably need to find a backer or some kind of broadcaster. So anyone who's been in the world of TV making will know that this process is like door knocking 100 doors and just hoping someone lets you in. So we had a few networks who were really, really interested, including National Geographic. So that was great. We were talking to them and there was some momentum there. And we thought, we still don't have enough money to actually fund the safety. Also the places that we're choosing aren't safe. So they won't be recommended by normal tour operators because we had to have security half the time. So many insurances came into play because of where we were. So, there were a few sensitivities that we had to be very mindful of, and it costs so much if you're doing it yourself. So we got a meeting with Netflix, it would have been about 3 years ago. And it was kind of before Netflix was as big as it is now. So we just kind of walked in. I think Tim and I were hungover. We actually thought that we were leaving. Yeah,
I love that.
We were in Los Angeles. We'd been knocking around on all these doors of other networks, and we happened to get this through our mentor, who has since passed on. Actually, he's passed away, but he was able to show us the door through this meeting. And we, like Tim and I, we'd gone out the night before. We didn't realize that the meeting was on that day. We were really, really relaxed, but at the same time, we were a bit hungover and a bit niggly at each other. And we didn't really pitch. We were just ourselves. And that goes against every rule that any TV producer or executive will tell you. But we also had like a small tape of what we imagined the show would be like. So we filmed a little bit ourselves to show them what we're like on camera. And next minute they said, you know what, we really love this concept and we'd love to back you guys. And so, yeah, we were able to start a relationship with Netflix, and that helped secure us financially in terms of getting on the road and making the show. So there's a lot of things that people don't see, even though we were a small crew. Like, we deliberately keep our footprint so small. I mean, we're going into areas that, they know the Western world, but they don't get Western visitors. So we're really, really mindful of how we go in, that it's not like a massive army and a cast of thousands. It was Tim and myself and our best mate, his name's Jimmy, who I think will never have a relationship ever after seeing us on the road for 14 months. And he helped with our logistics and made sure that everything was, working properly when Tim and I were on camera. And then we just went to work in all of these different places and lived basically out of a suitcase for 14 months, no electricity, running water, Wi-Fi, like the trimmings of normal life, and threw ourselves into it. So Netflix were always kind of behind the scenes going, how are you? Are you still together? Is everything okay? We had a wonderful executive producer who was very mindful of, she was almost like a counselor. Yeah. So we were able to have a lot of support on their front, which was great. Mm.
That to me is like, that's an exclusive, because that's like the behind the scenes of how it even got to where it was. Right. So, yeah. Okay. Would you say, you said you guys were living out of a suitcase. Would you say that you adapted to a minimalist sort of lifestyle?
Absolutely.
Were you a minimalist before this?
No, my parents are hoarders, like proper official hoarders.
Yeah.
I came from a relatively poor family. I'm the youngest of 4 kids, mixed background, mixed ethnicity, mixed religions, and always feeling like that little girl who was a bit different at school, like didn't quite fit in. Why don't I have blonde hair and blue eyes? It's kind of, you have those identity crises, and then you realize actually it's kind of cool to be different now. So, you come full circle, and waste of counselling and all the rest of it. But no, what I found was, I think in my childhood, my parents were always like, you don't waste anything, like even food, for example, and everything stays at home and you use everything until it's on its last legs. And I think just probably when I started working myself, I thought, oh, well, I've got my own disposable income and I want nice things, I want clothes. Going out to the tribes changed my life in that respect. So when we came home, we moved back into Sydney. And at the moment, we're currently living out of a suitcase, so we no longer live in Sydney. But when we moved back to Sydney, all of our stuff that we put in storage for 2 years came out. And I sat in the lounge and almost had a breakdown crying, going, I can't live like this. So it was a really weird thing. Like, if you had have known me in episode 1, it was like, oh my gosh, you're telling me to go to the toilet in the wild. Now I'm like, sometimes I would rather go out in the wild than a normal public toilet. So my perception and my perspective of what we need has completely changed, and not necessarily for the better. Like, I'm always trying to get rid of stuff, or I'm trying to offload it, or try to give it to other people, and forever trying to offload stuff. But at the same time, you truly don't need any of it, and it's a really liberating feeling to know that you can live out of a suitcase, and it's totally fine to wear the same clothes day in, day out. And I would never have thought I would have said that ever.
By the way, for those who haven't watched the show yet again, PJ makes this looks so good. I love how the beginning of the intro, where it's like you see you and Tim and it's like morphing. It's like little by little, they start off with the wedding dress and the tuxedo. PJ, I was like looking at you and I'm like, see, I can't pull that off. Like, my hair would have been like this.
Couldn't.
No, but I love how it's like your hair was like messed up, but you like made it look chic. I was like, you see, this is why you own it. And then I'm like, I wonder if she was always like this, or if this just kind of developed into it. Yeah. So is there like a freedom now? Like, are you completely free? Like, because now you have changed, right? I'm sure. So tell me, how has the show changed you in the way of your own limitations?
Oh my God, that's such a great question. God, coming out with them, seriously.
Thank you.
Look, seriously, great wavelength. It's anything is possible. And I know people say that and you hear it, but when you do it and you believe it, it's through your bones. You can still have fears, but that's a reaction. It's not the reality, right? So, and fears are good, but so long as you acknowledge them and know that they're always going to be there, they're always like little signs for you. Just whether or not you're going to act on it or not. I feel like it's given me such an opportunity to see the positives in negatives. I mean, a lot of girls, and I mean, mind you, I was 36, 37 when we went on this. A lot of girls would have gone, I'm staying at home and I'm going to have kids and I'm going to, start to have a family, and this is what's important in my life. And why would I live out, in these wild areas? And, it's not for everyone. And I totally get that. But for me, stepping outside of my comfort zone was more symbolic of what I could do, with my body and my mind and my soul and my spirit. So it was more like, it was more an extension of just going, what am I capable of? And I truly believe if I can do it, anyone can do it. It's not exclusive. I mean, I want to take this opportunity and share it with the world, which I hope we have done and are doing. But at the same time, I truly believe that anyone watching this should be able to realize that they can do it too. It's the step, and we're talking about vulnerability, just the step out of your comfort zone to realize that it is possible. And that's growth. That's the definition of growth, right?
Yes, absolutely. And you will see the evolution of the growth on the show. So you've been around the world. What would you like to see more of in the world?
How long do we have?
We got time.
I'll be controversial for a minute. So one of the things so when we were out on the road, at the time I didn't know this because we were so out of contact with our team back in Australia and also in America. We just had a satellite phone. But at the time I won an award from the United Nations for my journalism work before I entered into this world. And the story was for a big investigation in Australia about sexual assaults on campus, on university rape, basically. And it took a couple of months, and we put it together, and we won this award, and we were really, really proud. So I was a bit late coming to the party because I hadn't heard of the news until about a month later. And one of the first things I did, like one of the fun things of being in the tribe is that you miss out on so much news because you just don't have the accessibility of being on the phone or Wi-Fi or checking your internet or emails. And so one of the first things I did was I shared it with the group of girls that I was with. And the conversation went a bit like this through our interpreter, because we always had interpreters or translators with us everywhere we went. And I explained to them that, I was happy this day because I found out I'd won this award for my work. So work became a conversation. The job, my career became a conversation. And then I talked about what it was for. And the subject matter was for women and men who go to university, and if they were sexually assaulted, they reported what happened and the investigations around that. Was it handled properly? Were the complaints diligently followed up on? Were there police investigations? So I was telling them about sexual assaults, and then university, women's education. And the conversation for me, it was a massive reality check, because my peers in the tribe they didn't care so much about the win or the prize, or there's no accolades. It was like, okay, so you have a job back home, and women have the possibility of not just normal education, but university education. If they're sexually assaulted, something happens, and like it was like a process overload. And I had just left, like in the world, like 3 years ago. The Me Too movement was huge, and gender pay gap conversations and debate was really, really big, and there were so many really positive things that were happening in the world and advancements for women. When I went out there, I started from scratch, and I really realised our privilege. You don't feel privileged when you're out there because you can't survive like they can. You can't do as much work as they can without complaining. You know that your hands are too soft and baby, to realize that you on their turf, on their terms, you don't stack up. But then on that level, when I was sharing some exciting news, I went, oh my gosh, we've missed a whole demographic of women. We forgot to bring our sisters with us. And I thought, I wonder how that happened, and I wonder how that can be rectified. But we painted a beautiful picture of the tribes, because we weren't there to do an investigative inquiry about everyone that we went to, but we were in places where when the clock winds back, it's not just for cleaning and chores and domestic duties, it's also in views of equality and education and health. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, because we weren't also there to do that kind of documentary. We weren't there to expose them or their way of life and their living. We were there to firmly look at the way that they make, their marriages last and their love last. And admittedly, it is a very traditional gender role way. But at the same time, what I couldn't help but be struck by was that, wow, what we need in the world when we're talking about equality is to remember that, there's a lot of other people we can bring with us as well. It's one thing to have so many advances, and we should be so proud and happy. And yes, a lot of things still need to be done. But at the same time, we can share that with other people in the world. The world is shrinking. It's getting smaller. Electricity is going into these places. They're starting to get connected. And the first thing that they do is have a phone, and they want to find out, where their friends are and connect. And the sooner they see, how the other parts of the world live, the more they want. So it's a really difficult process of evolution. I know a lot of people have got different opinions about it. I've heard so many people say you shouldn't go in there in the first place. You shouldn't talk to them. You shouldn't integrate with them. You shouldn't visit them. And at the same time, you think it's denying what they want, though, as well. Like there was never a place that we went to that didn't welcome us with open arms and weren't all in tears when we left because of the friendships we formed and the bonds that we made. So it's a really hard topic, but I kind of feel like in so many of our advances, it'd be great to bring so many other people with us. And for the sole reason that I think that's when a real movement gets momentum and lasts. So when you see it through that groundswell, and it's completely unexpected, I feel like that's got a better chance of staying and staying for the long term.
That's so beautiful. That's like I just saw the globe, and it's like like literally I saw like, okay, this is how everyone feels here, and these countries, and this. What about these countries, and what about here? What about if we go deeper and deeper and deeper?
Yeah.
The global movement. I absolutely love that, and I will co-sign on that because I think that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Where do you see yourself going in the future? Do you see yourself doing this activism stuff?
I'd love to. I'd really, really, really love to. I mean, we love filmmaking. We love putting ourselves out there. We love looking at like the everyday issues and kind of giving like a mass counseling session in an entertaining way. I mean, that you obviously picked up on in kind of sharing our vulnerability and going, hopefully people can learn. At the same time, they're big projects. You know, it takes it out of you. You're gone for 2 years. It's really exhausting. You don't see your family and friends. You're broke half of the time. Like, you know, contrary to what there's the belief is that, you worked for Netflix. It must be, amazing. No, there's a lot of expenses involved. There's a lot of risks involved. Like I said, you are distant from civilization for a while. So there is a lot of sacrifice. And at the same time, it's kind of like, once it gets under your skin, you can't let go of it as well. Like like you become a changed person when I think you have those experiences. So I think at the moment we still want to do those big projects, but at the same time we do want to diversify and see how we can still touch on those things that we're really passionate about, and see how we can make a difference. I mean, that's our life. Tim's convinced me well and truly I'm on the train. So and also try and fit in a family as well, like, try and somehow see how
for Christmas. They want you guys there for Christmas.
That family and our own family, like if there's a future there, so that's what we really hope as well. Yeah.
Right. And then what about future wise, as in, I mean, I saw the ring, so the ring's back on, because I recall, yay! Oh, I love
it. I sometimes get him, like, hang on, it's huge. It's
crazy. Is huge. It's beautiful. And I love. I am like, it's the funniest thing. Like I tell everyone, I'm like, I'm not a hopeless romantic. I'm a hopeful romantic.
Yeah.
So, right. So I'm like, I see it and I'm like, I was rooting for you guys. Cause I was just like, I don't even care. Yeah. So you're a human. We all are human, right? We go through these waves and I mean, if any of us were put in those circumstances, we would all be responding in different ways. Like
you lose
your mind. It's so easy when it's like everything's simple, but when you put yourself out there, it's like, of course, the real you is going to come out. And I feel like that's the part of you that you want to love. So, without spoiling it, because I don't know, does the future hold like marriage? Because I know you guys talked about marriage in season 1 and what it means to be married, but I'm curious.
Right. I'm curious. I know we're pretty open. Oh God, we're open about everything. So, in the show, thankfully dismantled the myths of marriage. I had my baggage of going, oh my gosh, I've already failed at marriage. Why the hell would I sign up for it again? And Tim was like, well, I've come from seeing marriage dismantle around me, and I know that you're the one, so I want to make that work. Why can't we just commit in that way? And then kind of came to this halfway effort of going, you know what, let's commit to being together forever. So that's, I guess, the essence of the commitment ceremony. And in what you're talking about, legalizing it, it's certainly not off the table. It's certainly not off the table at all.
Yes, so I heard it here first. Love it.
I guess what we want to make sure that, we're pretty set on this because of everything that we've been through. Some of our friends are still like, yeah, but you're not married. You still haven't had the white wedding. And we're like, didn't you see this show? That was the whole point.
Yeah, that's what the point was. This break. It's me.
Yeah, exactly. But we do still want to do something because another thing that we also realized, and it was actually my dad who said this. My dad's quite a wise old man. He said, sometimes for us, when you guys are so certain we know that you are, almost the wedding's not for you. It's for us to celebrate ourselves in your love.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it was a wise thing to say, and it made me go, oh, actually, if I just stop being so and stop thinking up
The
here,
limits,
actually,
though.
yeah,
Isn't it the programming though? It's everything that you've learned. And I think
oh,
that's the biggest takeaway is when you get to travel the world, people say like, oh, buy more things, that'll enrich you. And it's like, no, travel and that will enrich you. Like you start to realize like, this is how these people live. This is how these people live. Everyone is viewing, we're all on the same planet, literally just floating in space, right? Like even that in itself is a miracle, right? Yeah.
quite,
And
quite.
then what I loved, what I took away from the show was that you guys so the love being the best adventure ever, right? Like let's do this for the experience. I think you guys are creating this whole new wave of let's do it our way. It's like living life without obligation, living life without what someone else thinks, what someone else does. It's about us. And I am like, yes, I am.
I so appreciate that you picked that up. I so appreciate that you found that. I mean, it's really funny. We're talking about perceptions before, and the dangers of I guess living life by a perception. Because if you prosecute and really investigate a perception, is it true? And I kind of think, as a child, I probably had a rare, like a fairly typical childhood, like so many maybe of your listeners as well, where you grow up on fairy tales. You have the happily ever after. There's a prince who kind of comes in and saves his princess. There's no same sex. There's no LGBT. You don't have any diversity. It's just the man saving the woman. And I mean, they're classics, but God, they've got to go. Yeah. And then like Hollywood kind of steps in with movies, and you think, oh, there is someone for everyone, and it's perfect. And again, happily ever after. And now social media kind of fills in the gaps, and it's like hashtag couple goals, hashtag relationship goals. And I kind of feel like we're sold a myth on the basis of what a relationship should be. And when you think of it, even statistically, how difficult it is to find two people to be perfect for each other in 7 point whatever billion that we are on the planet at the moment. And imagine that the expectations of this person is just as high for them as they are high for you. And it's almost like the biggest recipe for disaster. I kind of think, wow, and I had a lot of counselling after, full disclosure, lots of counselling after my divorce. And I really worked on dismantling the perceptions that it had to be perfect. I mean, I grew up thinking you get married, you stay married for life. It's the one marriage, it's the one person, that's it. And when that broke, as I said, it was the best thing for me, because it took me a long time, but to see the value and the positivity and the grace and the beauty in all of that made me realize, oh, I can take the pressure off actually. And I can realize that when you find that real love and you foster it and nurture it, it's not a fantasy, it's hard work. It can be, sometimes disappointing. Sometimes it can be not what you think. Sometimes you grow and they grow and you're slightly out of sync. And sometimes you go out and you come back together again. Sometimes there's betrayal. Sometimes there's great disappointment. But through it all, if there's that love and the commitment to grow, I think you're there, And I certainly, for Tim and I, one of the things that we really realized was we are really committed to growing. We're committed to, no matter what phase and stage that we're in, and we don't think that we're perfect at all. We still have a Barney every now and again, and it's kind of like we are committed to being on that train of life, going, we're going to grow individually and together, and whatever happens, we're holding our hands in that ride. And I think it's hopefully realistic. It's not perfect. It's not always great, but we feel more real and we still have a lot of fun. I mean, you have to remember, in extreme engagement, you see out of 14 months, the highs and the lows of the extremes that happened. So we weren't always fighting, and I wasn't always being a bitch, and Tim wasn't always pushing me. We had a lot of amazing times as well. That just never made the show. But yeah, so that's what certainly my takeaway of marriage and commitment has been. As for legalizing it, for me, it's no longer a scary thing, or I don't worry about it. No, not at all.
So glad to hear that.
I feel like it would be really great to have our families together, and my dream was to bring them to New York. to where we got engaged. I thought that would be
confirmation. It's a confirmation. Think about it. I'm from New York. Like, it's totally a confirmation. It's the universe saying, you got to come to New York. I'll come. I'll be there. I'll be like, yay!
And then we priced it in our heads and went, oh, damn, that's quite a lot of money from Australia. So like,
it totally is.
Yeah.
But, you know, you said anything's possible. So you never know, right? You never know.
I know, we're putting it out there.
Always put it out into the universe and always be positive. So I always ask the guests to share something that has helped them along their journey that would be of great value for the audience. You did that already, but anything that you want to add on to anyone who's like, I always say, like, life is a journey, right? Life is the greatest adventure. So if anyone's like feeling, I don't know, like they're ready to take a risk or ready to go out there and step out of their comfort zone, fall in love, you know, try again as you will. What would you say in terms of perfection? Because you mentioned perfect, right? You mentioned how is perfection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd say try to find the joy in letting go. There's beauty in that as well, because that process will challenge you, it will push you, it will make you feel uncomfortable, it will test you. And the idea to let go is to be vulnerable and not know the answer and not have control, and to know it may not be perfect, but actually there's perfection in that very moment as well. And that's a massive relinquishing of any kind of control. It's a massive surrender to the universe, God, whoever you want to, you know, kind of feel like is helping and guiding your light. And I feel like when you practice that, it's, you're kind of practicing your spirituality, right? Like practicing letting go is such a testament to your spirit anyway. And the more you do it, I think the more courage you have to face other things in life. And it's something that we really not take for granted, but we just kind of pass it off as going, oh, whatever. Because we wake up of a day, you have goals, you have objectives, you want to achieve stuff, you want certain things in life, and you want to hit those markers. And totally, I'm the same way. Letting go feels almost a little bit like, what, is there no direction anymore? Do you have no input? Are you having no shape to what you want? And it's not that. It's sometimes just allowing the universe to step in and show you even a different way, which might not be what you thought, but it could be better. And I think we love being controlled. I think there's a little bit of a control freak in everyone in a different way. And I think what I've learned and what I would take away and certainly want to pass on to everyone is that there is total beauty in letting go. And it's not comfortable, and it shouldn't be, but once you start to feel it, I think you also become really grateful for that process. I know it sounds completely spiritual pie in the sky, but I truly believe that.
I'm so super grateful for you, because I totally, that you're speaking to my soul. So I know that the viewers out there will definitely appreciate that. So
I hope so.
They definitely will. If you guys, what's that?
I was going to say, I might watch Extreme Engagement and go, this is nothing like how she spoke.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh well, I was going to say, guys, if you guys, honestly, you have to see, and that's why I was really intrigued by the show, was because first off, it's very real. It's raw. It is something that is discussed. I believe it takes out all the veils of what you believe is out there. This is not, I'm a rom-com girl. I will 100% admit I love my chick flicks, and I love this show. And I was like, yes, because to me, I thought it was the first time somebody was actually saying love is many different layers, and we're going to expose all of it. And then you're going to see the beginning, and then you're going to see the end. And now you said after 2 years, right? Here we have a new sort of sense. So I feel like, guys, go watch Extreme Engagement on Netflix. It is amazing. And then watch this interview, or whatever way, but you guys are going to be drawn to it. PJ, thank you so much for being here.
Oh gosh, thank you so much. I could talk forever, seriously.
I literally love you. Like, and I feel like you and Tim, I even said it when I was watching it. I'm like, I'm sending them so many blessings, and like, because I know that love itself is such a beautiful thing when you obtain it. It's the highest vibration that we have here, right? And it's what everyone wants to be at. So I always send like a white protective divine light to protect you guys. Yes, I love. Yes. So guys, check it out. Extreme Engagement. PJ, thank you so much for being here. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to go to soulexcelsior.com. I absolutely love you guys.